On this episode of Ask an Artist, I'm joined by Chris Clements of Fix It in Post. Some of Chris's most notable work includes the Reimagined series, in which he takes a really notable film history event like Scene 38 of Star Wars and updates the visual effects to be just more up to date while keeping the story and everything else intact. Chris also works as a stunt previs artist for some really notable action sequences that you've definitely seen. You can find links to everything discussed in this episode in the show notes below or at actionvfx.com/podcast. So let's go ahead and hop in this episode and talk to Chris. Hey everybody, Luke Thompson from ActionVFX here with another episode of Ask an Artist. Really excited about this episode. We have Chris Clements from Fix It in Post, a really popular YouTube channel, and some of his work has been just so fascinating as far as revisiting some really iconic moments in visual effects history. So really excited to discuss those. What's up, Chris? How's it going, man?
Hey, Luke. Good to be here, man.
Yeah, super glad to have you and kind of nerd out together on some visual effects stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm glad we're getting the opportunity.
Yeah. So let's just jump right into it. Chris, the question for you today is why revisit? And we can kind of unpack that in a couple different ways. But what kind of in your mind caused you to want to revisit Scene 38 specifically?
Yeah. So that's the big question.
Right.
You know, I think it goes all the way back to a director that I've been working with for a lot of years now, nearly a decade. His name's Philip Silvera, and he's done a lot of things that people probably know. He's responsible for the Oneer shot in Daredevil. He stunt coordinated Daredevil season 1, season 2. He did stunt coordinated on Deadpool, and just a lot of amazing shows that had even more amazing action. So he hit me up after he saw Rogue One and the infamous hallway scene where Vader is just thrashing and trashing everyone, and it's just pure ruthless raw hatred. And he hit me up and he's like, I think we need to revisit a New Hope. Like, I think we need, like, this is such a short period of time between that hallway scene that we got in Rogue One and the fight between Kenobi and Vader in A New Hope in Scene 38. And he's just like, this doesn't match. The energy doesn't match. And, as fans, we know that there was a lot of, like, technology differences back then. I think stunt coordinating was different back then. There was limitations due to even, like, the props, like the lightsabers they were using were hooked up to, they had, like, a lot of cabling that ran down the arms to help spin because it was the filament in there that helped reflect and create the lightsaber look. So there was just a lot of limitations, and they didn't, for Alec Guinness, they just had him do the fighting himself. So, I mean, all of that completely makes sense. But I think when we saw that scene as kids, we imagined something in our heads, maybe just a little bit more intense and more in line with that hallway scene. And so Phil hit me up and asked me, like, can we redo this? And I'm not going to say no. That sounds amazing. I had no idea what I was committing to. I was just like, yeah, we can do this. Let's do it. And so from there, we fleshed it out. We did a previs of the entire fight and got incredibly talented stunt performers, Dan Brown and Rich Centrone, to play Vader and Kenobi, and a whole bunch of other really talented people helped out on that project in pre-production and production especially. And so it really was, can we do this? I don't even know if we ever went to, should we do this? It was just sort of like, it felt like after we saw that hallway scene, we needed to give it a crack. And I think the idea was always to try and recreate something that it was trying to kind of connect what we had imagined when we saw it as kids to what was there in reality. And so we always wanted to pay respect to the original content. We didn't want to adjust any of the story or affect any of that. It was just about bringing that raw, emotional, like, hatred that Vader has in that hallway scene to the guy who had cut him down and left him hanging on a volcano, decades before. And it, like, we just felt like we could bring a little something fresh to that.
Yeah, that was so good. And I mean, obviously the user response was enormous, or from the viewers.
It was incredible.
And I think that says a lot in and of itself, but it was just so well done all around, like even visually. Like I know it wasn't extremely long, but the amount of like it's all VFX
Oh
shots,
man.
the
Yeah,
entire
yeah.
thing, and just the way that that was kind of, as you said, paying homage to the way the story plays out, in canon, without divulging or like, hey, we're gonna try this new thing, and now there's lizards and
Right,
robots,
right.
whatever. It's like very in line and in step with the storyline, with the universe, but still approaching it in a creative way that, man, it definitely elevated it. And as you said, like watching that original scene being much younger, like that's kind of what you have in your
Right.
head anyway, but being able to like actually flesh that out and be able to visualize that with some high caliber like visual effects, I think is extremely impressive. And
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I'm just like a huge Star Wars fan anyway, so
Thanks, Luke. Yes, I mean, same here. All of us were who were working on it, and I think like too, on top of all of that, there's so much more story that we as fans know now than
mm-hmm.
people knew back in the late 1970s, like when the movie first came out. So it's like we knew about that duel between Anakin and Obi-Wan on Mustafar. Like we knew some of these things now, and
Yeah.
it's so like, okay, we can kind of. When we have Vader doing the uppercut onto the ceiling and like he's on fire, it's like let's do these little like calling pieces. I don't want to quite call them Easter eggs, but just these
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
nods to the different pieces that call back to like the history between these two because
Mm-hmm.
it's such a rich history and I think like this is it fits into the movie kind of as is. That was the idea, was like let's create something that could just be like dropped in. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
the visual effects are going to look a little different than back then. We can only go so far with what we can do to match. But, it probably could, if we were to do it over again, we could do much better because you learn so much along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think I started that, I believe we shot in early 2017.
Oh
And,
man.
and it took me a couple of years. I think it was about 2.5 years. I think we released it in May 2019. So it took me a
Yeah.
couple of years of being alone in my office, just slamming on a keyboard,
Yeah.
trying
I
to make it
remember
work.
because I think when you reached out to me and we had discussed it as far as like from an assets perspective,
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it was like a little over a year out from when it was projected.
I think
Um,
so. So maybe like sometime in 2018.
yeah, I think somewhere in that ballpark because I remember like not, I was kind of grasping like the pitch of like, okay, we definitely want to be involved, but like not having seen it until, it's like, whoa, okay, we're getting some final like
You're like, what are we doing
frame
here?
grabs and stuff at the end. Like it, I'm glad that it turned into such a huge thing and that it was so like, as I said, widely popular. Everyone was sharing it. It was extremely viral because everyone could relate to it from that universe. Kind of, I mean, you have, your one like big public response. Did you face any kind of like backlash or internal like, hey, don't touch this environment, this universe, from more on like the, I don't know, bigger studios or anything? Or was everybody pretty supportive of the project as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I think we tried to stay much to people's frustration, I think, pretty anonymous. I like
Mm-hmm.
to, on all the projects I'm doing, to not release too much until we're
Yeah.
finished, so that way we can avoid any of that type of stuff. Like a lot of other creators I've seen get shut down before they can even get going with
Yeah.
things, and that's such a bummer because I think there's probably been a lot of amazing content that's been lost along the way. And I think what we had done is we had these big dreams that we could finish all the visual effects in like 6 months. I think we shot in March 2017, and we put out a teaser that I think it had 9 shots, maybe 11 shots. I can't remember right now. In December, and it didn't do anything for a day or two, and then it got posted on Reddit, and then I think it was, like Christmas Day or Christmas Eve. It was just blowing up everywhere, and it was getting,
Yeah.
I think it ended up with a couple million views, which
Yep.
was mind blowing, and then obviously the full piece ended up getting more than that. But that little teaser that we put out helped propel both Phil and I, like, okay, we're on the right track here. This is
Yeah.
this is something that people are interested in, and we did get a lot of interest from there was a lot of news articles and different people that were reaching out, but
Mm-hmm.
we decided to stay the anonymous route. We're just going to be fix it in post and get this thing done, because it's not done for, I mean, this is just sort of a love of the craft and trying to create fun ideas, and it's not done for any kind of marketing or money or anything like that. This is just something that's
purely passionate.
Yeah, we're just passionate about it, and
I love it. Yeah,
we're doing our thing kind of in our day jobs, but like this is the stuff. We were working on Terminator Dark Fate during like a large portion of Scene 38, and Phil and I would have side meetings like after we'd go through some of the previses we were working on for Dark Fate, and we're like, okay, let's get to the stuff that we're really excited about here. Let's like review some of these shots. Let's go into this and that, and so it was sort of like, all right, let's pay the bills with this work over here so we can really have fun and try some crazy things. And yeah, I mean, I think that's what makes life fun, is these type of things.
Yeah. For sure.
But your question on if we had any pushback, we definitely had a lot of fans that, I shouldn't say a lot, but I guess such a large amount of people saw it that there, quantity wise, there was a lot of people that like were frustrated, but I would say it was majority enjoyed what we did. There was a lot of people that were like, you shouldn't have touched this, or you shouldn't have done that, and all of that. And I get where they're coming from. I think I appreciate the passion either way. If they like it or if they hate it, like that's cool. Like you're a big fan of the same story that we are. So but yeah, I think that would probably be the main pushback we got, was just from some fans, but it was very minor and not unwarranted. Some people criticized the action at some points, which was a bit of a crack up, because we have all these Hollywood stuntmen who are working on this. And of course we were anonymous, so it worked out where they didn't have that bias going in, knowing that who had done this, but it was a crack up. Some of the comments, this is some, what was this? And it's like, oh yeah, these guys, they know what they're doing.
That's awesome. I feel like we always, especially on this podcast, we always end up like laughing about comments that we get on like YouTube videos and stuff, no matter like the caliber, because it's always like, it usually leads with, you suck, go die.
Yeah. I kind of got into this industry a little over a decade ago. I was creating YouTube, like After Effects tutorials on another channel, and creating little short films like superhero stuff. And I had like a mildly popular channel at that time a while ago. And I think I developed a little bit of a thick skin back then, because I didn't have any real experience. It was just I was learning After Effects and putting out what I was making. And so obviously it was not going to be good. But that's what ended up leading into, working full time in the industry, was that period of time. So coming back with Scene 38, it kind of felt like stepping back into the social media pond of, like, let's,
a lot of eyes, a lot of viewers. That's
a lot of opinions.
Tons of
and
opinions.
Frankly, like, there's some amazing people out there that have like done reactions or have done breakdowns on Scene 38. And one of my favorite things is when people will come up with a detail that was not intentional that we had done. And I'm trying to think of an example. I don't know if I'll come up with one right now, but sometimes people will spot something and be like, oh yeah, this is that. And we're like, no, we didn't intend to do that. But I love the fact that you're looking for it and that you took that from it.
That's really cool. And like you mentioned briefly about like having the stuntmen and stuff. I don't know, your own experience, kind of like take us back just a little bit. Like, where did your love for like VFX and stunts kind of intersect and combine? Because I know, with your IMDb credits, your history, a lot of like previs stunt work. Where did both those paths kind of align for you?
Yeah, so that goes back to when I was doing those original YouTube videos and whatnot. Ironically, it was Phil who I did Scene 38 with. He was doing and this is like the full circle of all of this. He was doing a previs for episode 7 of Star Wars.
Nice.
Way back in the day. This was, I want to say maybe 2012, 2013. Well before the movie was in production. And I had done a Star Wars fan film. That's how I learned visual effects. And it was for the Lucasfilm competitions that used to be yearly. And I don't even know if they still do them or not, but
I don't know.
They would show them at like the big Star Wars conventions every year. They would pick the finalists. And I did one. I spent like 9 months rotoscoping lightsabers, and it was a finalist. It was really bad, but I got all the basics of visual effects down and how how difficult visual effects can be when you're going frame by frame, rotoscoping 4 lightsabers and all of that.
Yep.
And I think I realized then that I wasn't deterred by the grind. And
Yep.
so that was online, and Phil and another stuntman named Brady Romberg, who was helping produce some of those previses back then. They saw my YouTube channel and they reached out to me. You know, if anyone was kind of like involved in YouTube in the late 2000s, early 2010s, there was a lot of people that would reach out who were phonies. And I was a little over even responding to people back then because it was so much, you know, people would have $40 to do some kind of crazy short film or just ridiculous stuff. And I think it was Brady reached out to me, and he was asking if I was interested in doing this Star Wars thing. I'm like, I don't want to, like, no, I'm just going to keep creating my content here. Like, I didn't even look him up or anything like that. And then he said that, yeah, we're turning this previs into J.J. Abrams in like 2 weeks or something. And I was like, what? Really? Okay.
You have my attention.
You have my attention. And then I didn't sleep for the next 2 weeks because I was rotoscoping lightsabers once again. And that previs is online. It ended up turning into more of a concept viz for the action. We didn't work on it further from there. But yeah, so that was sort of my connection into that world with stunt coordinators and action designers. And from there, a lot of people saw what I was doing. There were some stunt guys who were doing visual effects on previs, but their main skill was being a stunt performer and not a visual effects artist. So, and back then, not too many previses had any visual effects. So we were kind of this new little niche. And so it sort of spread like wildfire for a while, where I was doing a lot of visual effects on different shows and different movies and whatnot. And it was a ton of fun because it sort of felt like creating my own YouTube videos again, because things didn't have to be perfectly polished because they're very tight turnaround. Sometimes I would get a previs and they're in New York, I'm in California, and it would send it to me at 9 p.m. my time, and they're like, yeah, we have a meeting for my time it was 5 a.m. We have a meeting, we need to show this. And so I'd jam all night and try and get in what I could. And I like to kind of define previs as it's sort of like it's a storyboard, but it's like a live action, a moving storyboard. So you're really just trying to tell the story points, like, okay, this guy gets shot in the shoulder, so you'll just do a cool blood effect, or a smoke grenade goes off, and so you have all this atmosphere. And we did a lot of cool stuff like that on Terminator, especially with some of your guys' assets, with some of the fog and the atmospheres and all of that. And that came in handy.
Nice. Yeah. So I guess if you could kind of keep elaborating on that a little bit with visual effects assets. I mean, yeah, that's what we make. It's like, so we're always trying to see, like, where can we improve? Where can we, like, how can we push the bounds and make the tools that we have more useful and, like, save more time? So, like, even bringing those in for Terminator, was that kind of like, I guess, as far as asset libraries go, was that, like, very helpful to the project? Would you say that, like, helped turnaround times and just kind of cut down on, like, if you had to go film an asset yourself or something like that?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think especially on Terminator is a big one, because we previs the whole movie, and there's some very big action sequence with Arnold Schwarzenegger at the end where he's got, I believe it's been a few years, I think he had a big hammer, and then one of the main actresses had this chain that she was like whipping, and like they're fighting the new Terminator, the new villain of this week, and they're hitting the ground, they're hitting columns, they're doing all of this stuff, and your guys, your like groundbreaking assets and some of the different fractures and stuff was so pivotal, being able to show those moments and show the strength of Arnold when he's slamming down, into the ground, and the Terminator barely moves his head out of the way. I was able to just, like, in 5 minutes, just, download an asset from your guys' library, drop it in there, like, do a quick comp. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect, but it's like the quality is there. And then I think I would, like, retime it a little bit just so it, like, would match up with his movements.
Yeah.
And then it was like, done. That looks amazing. Moving on. And
nice. Yeah, that's really helpful. And I know, especially in the previs world, as you said, it's like quick turnarounds, really high pressure, high intensity. Yes. And I've interviewed Dave McComber a while back,
Yeah, I don't know
So
him personally, but I've seen his work. He's very talented.
yeah, and he had kind of explained a little bit as far as the process for how pitches work, because having more like VFX, more standard, I guess if you will, production background, like that was just way new to me as far as like you build out the fight sequences and you're essentially pitching it to the
Yeah,
director. Can you talk a
yeah.
little bit about like how that process works for those that may be a little more unfamiliar with kind of where those roads meet?
Yeah, sure. So a good example of a previous process from another movie was when we worked on Deadpool with Tim Miller, and they were Blur, especially, which he
Hmm.
owns, was very accustomed to the whole previous process, and Phil has been working with them for a very long time. He did a lot of those Star Wars cinematics back in the day that were very, very popular, doing the action design and stunt coordinating. But
Hmm.
he was very, very excited in tune with us doing multiple previs passes. So kind of how that process works is the stunt coordinator is given a script, and it will have sometimes more, sometimes less detail of like essentially the main story points of what needs to happen. And then they're
Hmm.
given a location, and it's like, okay, this needs to be 45 seconds. And
Yeah,
it
it's like
really,
figure it out.
yeah, it kind of depends on the director, like the timing. There's a lot of variables, but
Hmm.
this is kind of a general idea of how it goes. We need to fill up an action sequence with a minute. And some directors are more detailed, some are less. But essentially, they'll get this concept with maybe 3 sentences, and it's like, okay, make sure that you're using like a pipe or a gun or
Hmm.
whatever. And then the action coordinator or stunt coordinator will go in and will design it out with the stunt team. And once they get a general layout, what they'll do is they'll film a previs of that. And generally, that first pass is just, hey, are we getting the beats right? It's like a blocking
Hmm.
layout of what's
Yeah.
happening. They'll show that to the director. Director will typically be like, I love this, this, and this, but let's tweak this stuff here. And
Hmm.
then they'll go back and kind of like refine and tweak some more. And it's usually, I've definitely done a lot of work on first pass previses because some productions don't have time to do more than one. It's sort of like
Yeah.
we get what we get. And especially on TV shows, that's true because they have very fast
Hmm.
turnaround times. On Deadpool, there were some sequences that we refined that for months. And it's not like I had time to work on it for months, but it would be like a new
Yeah.
version of the previs would show up, and then I'd have maybe 24 hours to turn around or 48 hours to turn around. And that's a tough cookie when you've got like 3 minutes of sparks and blood hits and all these things to
Yeah.
do. And that's why it's so important to have the right asset packs. I definitely have favorites from your guys' blood and gore kit and your sparks kit. And like it's like the Spark 07. Like I know these things. I have my favorite list that I know it looks good. Like when a knife, like a
Hmm.
sword is swinging this way or that way. So having those when you're in those kind of like tight deadlines, high pressure. I mean, this is going to
Hmm.
some like very, very, very influential people in Hollywood, and they know it's a previs, but you only get one shot at showing them what the
Yeah.
vision is. And
Yep.
the better that I can, like, the better compositing that I can do to tell our story to sell a certain gag. Like if this guy needs to
Yeah.
like break his neck and like we want to show the blood coming out, like these things are so important because if it
Hmm.
looks good, they're going to greenlight it. If it looks
Yeah.
janky, that's what they have in their mind. Even if they know, oh, they only had 12 hours to work on this. It's like you can get
Yep.
one shot. And so having the high quality assets to be able to drop in confidently and quickly and
Hmm.
know that they're gonna play, and I need to do a lot less work to make them look good. It makes the whole process so much more refined.
Awesome.
Um,
Yeah, that process as far as like the stunt previs. Once I talked to Dave about that, like it just opened my mind to like this whole other world of how each thing, each revision, whatever, is a sales pitch,
yeah,
and like it's just a grind to like, hey, we've got to do this. And in my mind, like all the stunt coordinated, it's just like such a complex beast. I can wrap my head a little better around the like VFX side, but when it comes to like having extreme turnarounds and stuff like that, that really blew my mind in a lot of ways.
yeah. And I can give
Um,
you another example on Daredevil that we did. Why
yeah.
the previs VFX is so pivotal to some of the storytelling. There's this fight between Nobu and Daredevil at the end of season 1, and Nobu has this, I don't know the weapon. It's essentially a chain with like a scythe at the end of it, and he's like
Hmm.
swinging and like slicing up Daredevil in all these different ways. Well, we had to like determine exactly where he's getting sliced in the previs, so that way the costume department and even the visual effects supervisors that were going to be handling the post knew what to expect. And so we carefully laid all of that out in a very short amount of time, but we laid it out.
Man,
Okay,
yeah.
it's like, okay, hit the ankle, hit the calf. And so what's a lot of fun is being able to look at some of these previses and do a side by side and see like, okay, like sometimes it looks like they just kind of recomposited the asset on the final footage and called it a day. It's like identical. And in regards to how much a previs is like a sales pitch, oftentimes if the action isn't looking as good as it should to the viewer, if you were to compare that final scene to what the previs looks like, I guarantee you most of the time they didn't follow the previs. The editor might have taken a different turn with it. And unfortunately, that happens sometimes, and it's a bummer because so much work goes into those action scenes. But the previs is the blueprint. It's the stunt coordinators. It's exactly how they see it, and so it kind of needs to be shown exactly how they see it to get the best performances, the best takes, the best like, oh, look at the way his head whipped here. Like they're going to see details that you and I would never notice, but the audience like reacts to it sort of on a subconscious level.
That's awesome. And it's been really cool also to see when we first started Action VFX, I would say that we were very like film focused in our mind of production, and we are still very film focused as far as like the quality of assets. We're wanting them to be able to be used as they can just drag them in, composite them, and roll for any like AAA level project. But one of the things that I wasn't expecting as much, as far as once time's gone on and you see kind of different use cases for the products that we make, is how they play into previs, and just being able to see, whether that's like turnaround on shorter, episodic TV series type things, or actually comping them in Unreal Engine, or kind of moving into some other different softwares. Like that was just something that was really surprising to me, and then also helped me kind of think in a different way of how can we continue to build things in that way to where it's most advantageous for not just those film guys that sit up there and do the compositing at these large studios, but all around the board. So I think that was really insightful for me. And as we continue to build products, always looking ahead at like, hey, what are things we can do to make your life better and to save you time? Because time is just always going to be that component.
Time is money.
Yeah, it's money. You can't replace it. You can't change it. And it's just constantly flowing. So I think that's always something that I try to keep in the back of my mind when it comes to building a new product, whether that's stock footage or anything else.
That makes sense. I've used your guys' assets on a lot of commercials and films that I've done as well. The post side of things, I think there was a week where I was doing. I mentioned that I used a lot of your atmospheric effects for Terminator. Well, I was the following week I was working on. I had supervised a campaign for a company called Nordic Track, and they had shot on this like LED wall a like kind of cloudy, like it was as if the apartment was like in the clouds, except there was this section of between the set and the LED wall where you could see the floor. So we needed to roto and then drop in some clouds. Well, I just used your guys' atmospheres in Terminator like a week before, and I'm like, I know these things look good. Let me just layer them up and then do a little quick tweaking. And I did it with the client like in there, and it took me maybe 45 minutes. The roto took a little bit longer, but the actual like tweaking of some of these atmospheres that I just used in the previs didn't take me any time at all. And he was blown away. He's like, great, that's final. Let's move on. And it was such a good feeling because that's great. That experience allowed me. That's what I love about previs so much is you get the chance to play. You get to try new things, and it doesn't need to be the most polished. And so you develop some skills and some knowledge of the tools that you have available to you, such as these stock assets. And then you can just go for it when it does need to be polished. And you're like, oh man, yeah, 08, that atmosphere, that is amazing. Like that's going to work for this. So yeah, it's really cool kind of like using it across the gamut of previs all the way to like, commercial work needs to be so polished and so refined. And, it's got that like that shine on it. It's the most opposite thing from previs that you can find, but it's cool that these assets, they can go from across the whole spectrum and work.
No, that's awesome. So Chris, what do you kind of have coming up as far as, I know you've worked on The Punisher, some of the other like passion projects.
Sure.
What do you have coming up on that realm? Is there anything kind of on deck that you want to, I don't know how much you want to share. If there's anything you want to kind of keep under wraps, that's cool too. But what's up?
Yeah, so the last year and a half, I've been spending a lot of time in Unreal
Mm-hmm.
Engine, and I bought an XN suit, which for those who don't know, it's a motion capture suit. I specifically bought that one
Nice.
because it works very well with
Mm-hmm.
stunts, and as people know, like I like to do some fun action, and so there are a couple of projects that I can't talk about right now. I've learned a lot of lessons from Scene 38 about revealing too much
Yeah.
information, and so I'd be happy to talk about those when we get a little
Mm-hmm.
closer, and I have like a teaser ready and an actual release date. But I've been spending a lot of time in Unreal learning that workflow and getting some characters people are going to know in some fun shorts. And then I also released a teaser last year for Cloud City, which is the Bespin duel
Mm-hmm.
between Luke and Vader. And I can't say a lot about that either, but I would just say that like a lot of what I've learned in the last year and a half is going into that to make sure that that's the quality level it needs to be.
Yeah.
Because these are passion projects, obviously they take longer
Mm-hmm.
than anyone would ever think they should. But I want them to be the quality level that they should be, so
Yeah.
I never want to rush it. And we are really close. We worked out some interesting things with the Vader cape simulation, which was such a pain trying to figure out that. And in that teaser, I did use some of those same atmospheres that I was talking about from your guys' packs. I think I was like, this needs some more depth, like as I'm doing this camera
Mm-hmm.
angle in Unreal. So I ended up dropping it in After Effects, grabbing a couple of fog and atmosphere assets from you guys. And
Nice.
yep, that's where it needs to be. That's where it's at.
Sweet. That's yeah, that's really cool to hear. One thing that I will go ahead and share,
Yeah.
and we haven't talked about it too much publicly, so here's some inside scoop.
Oh, that's
But
exciting.
we have in the works a really exciting thing that we're going to be announcing hopefully within the next couple months. You know how any production thing is, it
Yes,
could
I
not
do.
be that. But we are actually in the process of working with a real-time effects company, and we're going to kind of be doing a joint partnership for converting a lot of our existing action VFX assets, so things that we've filmed for real, smoke, fire, all that good stuff, into Unreal Engine ready, like already built out in particle systems assets. And
Wow.
so you'd be able to just purchase them on Unreal's platform, drag them over into your scene, whether that's previs or anything else that you're doing, and you wouldn't have to convert those Action VFX assets because they're already going to be built out inside of Unreal. So if you need more, smoke, embers, less embers, whatever, all of those things are going to be locked and ready to go. So I am extremely excited about those.
That's incredible. I did another Nordic Track campaign last year, and we did the full LED wall Mandalorian style, and we
Mhm.
created like 30 worlds in Unreal Engine.
Yeah.
And one of the ones that we made was it was like a redwood forest and like those same beautiful atmospheres that you guys created. I dropped
I
them
love
in
it.
as sprites because it needed a little bit more fog, and
Mhm.
and the realism of some of the fog from Unreal wasn't quite doing it for me. So knowing that we could skip a lot of the process that it took getting those assets in there
Mhm.
is incredible.
Yeah,
Oh
we're
man,
we're really excited to kind of keep down that path. Obviously, it's pretty new for us. We're just kind of figuring a lot of things out as we go. But yeah, extremely excited to talk more about that, and people will be hearing more about that as it comes out.
oh, I'm excited. Yeah, my stuff. I'm living in Unreal right now, so I'm very excited about
Nice.
that.
Yeah, I will most definitely hook you up with some early access things
Oh,
once
that's
available.
incredible.
So
Thanks, Luke.
yeah,
All
hey, no
right,
problem, man. Thank you.
Christmas, Christmas in June.
Sweet. Chris, as we kind of wrap up here, where can people find out more about you, follow you on your platforms if they're unfamiliar?
Yeah. So there's the YouTube channel is obviously the big conduit. Anything that's on the passion project level, that's where it's going to go. Cloud City will be there
Mhm.
eventually, and so were some of the other projects that are in the works right now.
Yeah.
I'm more active on, I think, Instagram than anything else. And so that would just be FXITINPOST. That's the handle there. And then the website, I'm redesigning my website right now, but that would be just fixitandpost.com. And so.
Nice. Yeah. And we'll include all those in the show notes as well. Links to those sections. And yeah, Chris, thanks so much, man. This has been really fun chatting with you, kind of digging more into the stunt previs side, because it's an area that I'm pretty unfamiliar with. So I think this gave me a lot of insight into that world and kind of how our assets play a role in that, how we can continue to support you and your craft, because it's just, the stuff you're doing is clearly passion-led and passion-fed. So we want to be able to support you in that in any way that we can, whether that's assets or any other thing we can do.
Thanks, Luke. I appreciate it. You guys have always been so supportive of Fix It and Post, and I can't thank you guys enough, because there have been a lot of times where, I think it would have sunk the ship if we would have to go create it ourselves or, find the right assets. You guys have come through every time, and
awesome.
We've merged like this. All of my content has your stuff written all over it. So thank you.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, really excited to see your new projects. Obviously, Cloud City stuff. Once we see teasers, send those over, and we will absolutely blast those out, because I know I'm not the only person that wants to see those. So, Chris, thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Ask an Artist. Yeah, it's been great chatting.
Same, Luke. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.